Well, thanks so much, everybody, for having me. Again, I appreciate the invitation. My name's Tom Haggard. As Kim said, I'm the executive director of the Kentucky Out of School Alliance. And so we are the voice of after school here in Kentucky. And so excited to share both some research, but also resources as it relates to high quality out of school time, and also the partnerships that are needed to make sure that we can support all students across the Commonwealth. So just some real quick background on me. After school has been kind of part of my whole entire life. So I've actually been working in after school and summer learning programs since I was 16 years old. It was my first job working at the Covington Summer Youth Program in Northern Kentucky, up in Covington, Kentucky. And so ever since then, I've kind of done every job there is to do in after school or summer. I've been obviously a youth worker, I've been a site coordinator, I've overseen multi-site programs for a school district, and as Kim mentioned, since 2019, been with the Kentucky Out of School Alliance. A little bit about KYOSA, so I'll refer to it as KYOSA affectionately, because we all love some good acronyms, and it kind of is a mouthful to say Kentucky Out of School Alliance all the time. But our mission is to support the continued growth, development, and accessibility. I really want to stress the word accessibility of quality out of school time programs to promote the success of children and youth all across our state. We are part of a 50-state after school network that is convened by the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation. So we have sister organizations in all 50 states, along with national partners that we collaborate with, including the After School Alliance, the National Summer Learning Association, and the National After School Association, of which KYOSA is the state affiliate of the National After School Association. Just a quick outline of my presentation today. We're going to go through some background information, kind of what are out of school time programs, and kind of what does that look like specifically here in Kentucky. We're going to talk about sustainable partnerships, because that's really the bedrock of high quality after school and summer learning programs. And then we'll get into resources and next steps. Throughout the entire presentation though, if you have any questions along the way, please don't wait till the end. Feel free to interrupt me. Let's have a conversation. There'll be several parts throughout the presentation where I'll be asking some information from you. Feel free to share about what you're seeing going on in your local community, or what you're working on in your role as well. A quick question I did want to just have for everyone real briefly. I know we don't have too much time together today, but if you would, in the chat, or if you're able to come off mute, would love for you just to share kind of a really positive after school or summer memory of your own, and why these programs can be pretty impactful. So as you're thinking about that, putting it in the chat or thinking about it to come off mute, I will share, because when I was in elementary school, my school started an intramural sports program, and it was as part of intramural sports where I actually played soccer for the first time. I grew up in a baseball family. My dad was desperate for me to play baseball throughout my entire life. But in third grade, I started playing soccer with my friends at intramurals in our after school program, and just fell in love with the game. Continued then to play soccer all through middle school, high school, into college, coached soccer for about 15 years. And obviously still in love with the game today. So it was through that after school program that really opened up something new that I didn't know about myself, and a passion of mine that I didn't know I had. And that's really part of the power of after school, is really helping kids to learn something new and see something different, not only about themselves, but maybe their community or the world in general. So would love if anyone else had anything to share about an after school memory, or a summer memory that they would like to share with folks. Chelsea, summer camp, absolutely. I know lots of people have great memories of summer camp. Great. Well, I know that these programs are very Girl Scout camp. Oh, absolutely. Um, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, scouting is certainly an essential part of after school and summer learning programs. So great. Well, I'm glad a couple of you were able to share. Like I said, I know we don't have much time together, but oh yes, see now they're coming in. We're talking about yes, more summer camps, 4-H projects at the county fair. Absolutely, I love this. And kind of as we talk about that, I want to get into just a little bit here about like what are out of school time programs. So we use the term out of school time kind of interchangeably with after school, before school, and summer programs. And it is a huge ecosystem, right? Just from some of these comments here, right? It's everything from intramural programs that I talked about to summer camps to scouting activities to 4-H to the plethora of activities that are going on in libraries across the Commonwealth. But when we are trying to define out of school time programs, because obviously as an organization, we have to have some definition around this so we can talk about the landscape of what this looks like in our state, which we'll get into here in a few slides. But we're really talking about those programs that are offered during non-school times. They are a supervised and safe space for youth. And they're comprehensive in nature. So they include opportunities for students not only to learn and focus on academics, but also explore interests and develop important life skills. And so again, these can happen before school, after school, during the summer months, over school breaks, anytime when school is not in session. We obviously have a variety of types of after school programs, everything from specialty programs that focus just on music or just on STEM, to more comprehensive multi-purpose programs like our 21st Century Community Learning Center programs. So 21st Century Community Learning Centers are the only federal funding stream dedicated to comprehensive after school and summer learning programs. Those funds are passed down to state departments of education. Our state department has a competition every year, and we have approximately in any given year anywhere from 140 to 160 21st Century Community Learning Center funded programs that are going on across the state. And those are comprehensive multi-purpose programs. So they're doing everything from tutoring to sports and recreation, to STEM activities, to arts. They're feeding students after school. And then obviously we have our more traditional academic programs that many folks are familiar with, everything from after school tutoring to summer school, to even academic enrichment activities are critically important, especially as we all know, coming back from the pandemic. Getting into some of the research about what it says about the effectiveness of these programs, we now have decades worth of research to tell us that high quality out of school time programs are some of the most cost effective way to improve the lives of students across the country and certainly here in the Commonwealth. So we know that high quality after school and summer really improve the ABCs, that being school attendance, school behavior, and coursework in the classroom. Additionally, we are now seeing the really great benefits that these programs have on social emotional outcomes for students, and especially when we're talking about safe and supervised spaces for kids to feel a sense of belonging. That's a really critical part of after school, especially, I was a site coordinator of a high school after school program for many years, and really saw the incredible impact that after school clubs could have on students that might not be able to find their niche anywhere else. Right? They were not maybe part of the band, they were not on a sports team, they didn't really have that connectivity to school, but they were able to find that in an after school club of whatever that was, whether it was an art club or some other service club. But they were finally able to find that connection to school and find some other like-minded young people to build a community with. And so we know 100% absolutely when folks are looking for evidence-based solutions to help support students, we know that after-school and summer learning programs are an incredibly cost-effective way to do that. So what does this actually look like here in Kentucky? One of the things that we have worked on at KYOSA for the past 4 years is to get a much better handle on what does after school and summer learning look like here in the Commonwealth. There have been many studies and reports put out specifically around childcare deserts and early childhood programming and things like that, which are incredibly important. But no one has really focused on what this looks like for a school-age population. And I maybe should have said that a little bit earlier. At KYOSA, we are exclusively focused on the school-age population, so kindergarten through 12th grade. We certainly appreciate the work that our early childhood partners are doing and support all of their efforts, but we really want to make sure when it comes to the space we are specifically advocating for and looking into the interests of the school-age population, because they certainly have specific needs that need to be addressed. So as I mentioned earlier, that ecosystem for out-of-school time is certainly vast, and it certainly is here in Kentucky as well. The vast majority of our after-school and summer learning programs are licensed child care centers, probably make up about 65 or 70% of the identified programs that we know about. But as you can see, there's obviously a long list of other sponsoring organizations and providers, including libraries, which make up a huge part of this ecosystem. But for us, one of the difficulties that we've seen is being able just to identify the number of programs that are operating throughout the state. And so Kentucky is a state that doesn't have a lot of great data on this. And so there are very few publicly available lists of programs outside of those that are licensed by the state. And so we have continued to work to try to figure out how we can get better data to really understand the needs of our state and where we need to make critical public investments. Anyone want to guess what the primary source of funding for after-school programs are in Kentucky? You want to guess out of this list or something else that you think is number one? Sharon should win a prize because it certainly is parent fees. Parent fees are, yes, and Ashley is there too. Parent fees are by far the number one source of funding for out-of-school time programs in Kentucky. Obviously, many of you know this can certainly cause a lot of issues when it comes to equitable accessibility of programs. And so obviously we do have the Child Care Assistance Program. But again, that program is only limited to child care centers that are licensed. We know that there are many great after-school and summer learning programs that are happening all across the state that may not be technically licensed child care programs. And so again, how do we increase accessibility for families, especially families who may be experiencing poverty, and especially families where this just might be completely out of reach. So far in Kentucky, we do not have any dedicated state grant funding for after school in and of itself, and so we rely on the 21st Century Community Learning Center funding, and obviously a lot of the federal COVID relief funding has been directed toward efforts around after school and summer learning, especially in the American Rescue Plan Act, which is certainly winding down here now, but 20% of the funding that went to local school districts was mandated to be spent on addressing learning loss with a specific call out for after school and summer learning programs. And so we have seen a bit of a rise, especially in summer learning programs over the past couple of years. But now the challenge is going to be, how do we sustain some of those efforts? And one of the strategies that we're calling for to sustain some of those efforts are strategic partnerships and community-based partnerships, which we'll talk about a little later in the presentation. So the vast majority, this is from our 2020 out-of-school time program survey. So this was the first comprehensive survey of its kind. really trying to look at some of the basic operational characteristics of programs throughout Kentucky. As you can see, vast majority were after school. Many were before school. Summer was certainly there as an option before. But when it comes to publicly funded versus privately funded, we do see some differences here when it comes to things like the weekends, holidays, and other school breaks, which again, usually parents' working schedules don't stop then. So really trying to figure out this issue of safe and supportive environments for kids is a really critical one for us as a state. We can see here, and I'm sure many of you maybe have seen this working with students in your libraries or in your local communities. We certainly see a huge drop off as kids get to middle school, going into high school, about available programs for them. Obviously, we know, their social life changes a little bit, and some of, just their life in general changes a little bit. Maybe some are getting part-time jobs, others are getting more involved in extracurriculars, but we certainly know that we still have a need for some of these programs, especially through middle school, would be critically important. And so for us, we have really been pushing our publicly funded programs like 21st Century Community Learning Centers to perhaps make some, give some bonus points on grant applications for, middle school and high school applications to really try to increase the availability of programs for those grade levels. We know that for every one student enrolled in an after-school program in Kentucky, 4 more are waiting to get in. So we know we have extreme need right now. That's above the national average. The national average is for every one student in a program, 3 more are waiting to get in. And so we know we really have some work to do here when it comes to figuring out how do we make more programs accessible and how do we get more students in those programs. We do, through our partners at the After School Alliance, they've done several waves of surveys, and actually this was from just their last one, wave 9, which was conducted this past spring. 56% of programs in Kentucky report wait lists. And so again, knowing the majority of our programs have a waiting list, we certainly have capacity and accessibility issues. One of the great tools that came out of some of the work that we've been doing over the past few years is something we call the KYOSA Data Explorer. So this is a first of its kind map of out-of-school time program landscape across Kentucky. So we're really able to see, down to the zip code level, kind of what supply looks like, so we can make sure that we're making and advocating for targeted investments where we're not seeing a lot of program availability. We're actually getting ready to release our latest iteration of this information. We call it our Kentucky After 3 p.m. report. So we'll actually be releasing that next Thursday, October the 26th, to coincide with Lights On After School, our National Advocacy Day for after school programs. And so we'll be having an event at 10:30 in the morning at the Capitol Annex down in Frankfort, where we'll have several speakers. We'll be releasing our new information then, and it'll go live on our website as well that day. But critical information to kind of understand where we are and where we need to go if we're going to try to find a high quality out of school time program for every student in Kentucky. Going into barriers of participation, I don't think any of these will be that shocking, but they certainly are barriers that we need to think about kind of in a systemic way. How do we figure out how to solve them as a state and in local communities? Cost is certainly a huge barrier. As we mentioned earlier, and Sharon and Ashley correctly identified, parent fees are the #1 funder of after-school programs, and so as those costs escalate, can families afford to still send their students to after school and summer learning programs? Again, without any kind of other public subsidy for many programs, how to figure out how to get those costs in line for what a family can afford. And I see, yes, Chelsea actually just made this comment. Yes, transportation is our second second barrier when speaking to families, because oftentimes they feel like there is no safe way for their child to get to and from programs. So, oftentimes, even if a program may be school-based, sometimes they don't have the transportation to get that child home at the end of the program. And so that's incredibly difficult as well. This has been a number one issue that's been brought up by some of our 21st century community learning center grantees, is that while the cost of transportation has continued to rise exponentially over the past 10 years, the amount of grant funding that they're getting has not changed. And so, how do you just, the pie's not getting bigger. And so how do you continue to fund all these different things without the pie getting any bigger is a pretty big difficulty. And then the other barriers, there are just no programs. And so, we know from the America After 3 p.m. survey that 37% of Kentucky parents cited that there was just a lack of available programs. We know right now, I'll give you a little preview of our data that we'll release next Thursday, but we know there are 7 Kentucky counties where there are no identifiable after-school programs at all. And so that's not even to say there are no non-fee-based programs. There are just no programs whatsoever. And so, we know that there's still obviously a lot of work to do here. And we've been able to identify several strategies, right? One is just around increasing supply. How do we just get more programs up and running, or how are we able to identify more programs that are going on and connect families with those programs? Because that can also be a barrier sometimes. There are programs that families just don't know about that are in operation. So how do we help them kind of get the word out in their local community and help families make those connections? We need to figure out how to eliminate or reduce fees, especially for low to moderate income households. Again, this is how do we increase participation in our child care assistance program? How do we work with our philanthropic community to help eliminate some of those fees or some of those cost barriers for families is highly critical. And I think, as you can see here, we all know that trying to figure out a better way to align program schedules to parent work schedules is critically important as well. And so I kind of share some of that, which can kind of be a little bit of a Debbie Downer, like, I'm sorry. But, we want to be rooted in where we are so we know where we can go and where we need to go. I think oftentimes I get accused of being the bearer of bad news, but for me, if you don't know where you are, you can't really build a plan to get where you need to be. And so I always want to be rooted in kind of the data that's there, so I can make good pitches to folks to policymakers to help them figure out and draft solutions to get to where we need to be. And we think a huge key in that is creating sustainable after-school partnerships, which I think many of you probably are involved in yourselves in your local communities, and we would love to engage in your help and expertise in how to get there. As you've seen, and I'm sure some of you are in this bucket as well, but we know that school staff have been, just really overwhelmed after, almost 3 years now of dealing with COVID-19 and trying to really help students catch up. We really feel that the benefits of high quality out of school time partnerships are key here. One, we know that folks cannot do this themselves, right? We can't rely on just the school system or just the library system or just our local community center. Like, they cannot solve some of these problems on their own. But if we are working with a community focused model to where we're all leaning into our strengths, then we can get better outcomes for kids and for families. We also know that infrastructure is key, and not duplicating services is really key as well. And then looking toward that more with that sustainability lens, how do we keep some programs operating after their ESSER, their American Rescue Plan dollars expire? Well, it's going to be through natural partnerships in their local communities. And so, we have some great research and resources and support from our partners at the Wallace Foundation, who did a lot of work to identify what those elements of high quality OST partner programs are and of those partnerships. And so, breaking them down into kind of three big buckets here, and we'll talk about each. But preparing for that program delivery, being very intentional on the front end about what a local community needs is a key component of this. Second, how do we build and align those ecosystems of support? So again, how does one entity not take on the weight of doing everything themselves, but share that burden across so we can build better ecosystems for kids and families? And then how do we create and sustain those equitable conditions for learning? How do we keep this moving forward with an equity lens to make sure that all students are being served? And so, they have this nifty little graphic here, these critical elements, and we'll dive in to them a little bit. And then kind of under each of these three buckets, I'd love for you all to share maybe some of the things that you're working on in your local communities, or maybe some things that you've seen that are working really well. So we can have some peer-to-peer learning in this as well. So, looking in that first bucket around preparing for program delivery, I think here both the physical and the physical infrastructure and the human capital are key. So one of the things that we've been talking with a lot of folks, especially since the pandemic, that have wanted to start their own after school or summer learning program, right? They see the need in their neighborhood or in their school community, and they are raring and willing to go to figure out how do I get this started. But oftentimes, they have the will and they have the energy to do it, but they may not have the physical infrastructure. One of the things that we've asked them is, have you talked with other partners in your area? Have you talked with your local library? Perhaps they have, a rentable room or a rentable space in the library where you could go 2 to 3 times a week and host your after school program there, where, you don't have to build a new building to do this. We have some really great physical infrastructure in our community already there. And additionally, when it comes to human capital, could you collaborate with your local library or your local community center? Maybe they have a teacher who, can do, 1 hour of programming for you a week, to where, that's 1 hour programming a week that you don't have to be responsible for. So really kind of leaning into folks' strengths and not duplicating services is really key. So just curious, kind of through some of those examples, or have folks had any experience of that, at collaborating with kind of these entrepreneurs to kind of host events in your space, or maybe you're going out into other people's spaces to kind of bring some resources? Just curious if folks have seen any success with that in your own local community. Happy for you to come off mute or put that in the chat. Great, Ashley. I love that. Yes, Parks and Rec, another great partner when it comes to building comprehensive after-school programs. Absolutely, and also love that you're working with your family resource youth services centers. That's great. Okay, yeah. Homeschool students working at the main library. That's great. You have a bookmobile working with century programs. That's really awesome. Love that. Wow, Sharon's putting all the mileage on. She's getting out to 7 elementary schools every month. Oh, that's really great. And bringing those enrichment activities. Yeah, I think that's really, Sharon, I love that you mentioned that, bringing those enrichment activities like arts and STEM and other activities, because, I think especially for schools, when we've been talking to schools, one of the things that we say, obviously you have some great human capital in the certified teachers who are in your building, and they can certainly help with reading remediation and math remediation and all that great stuff. But how do you bring in those other enrichment activities that just get kids excited again and give them, an exciting place to go after school? And one of the things we often mention is you have to use your community around you, right? You have a great community, and it's great for kids to see other supportive adults coming into their school building and sharing their knowledge and expertise with them, just giving them a new adult face that they can rely on and get to know. is often great. So I love that you bring that up. Thank you. There we go. Got some other ones here. Great, we got some more collaboration with FRCs and bookmobiles. Love that you're collaborating with Save the Children. I should have mentioned that in the beginning of my presentation. Actually, Save the Children is the fiscal sponsor for the Kentucky Out of School Alliance. So we love the work that they do in Eastern Kentucky. So I think that's really great. Yes, we love making it as fun as possible. I think that's really key too, especially after school. We definitely want to make sure that kids see after school differently. The learning that happens after school has to be different. This is something we especially preach when it comes to summer learning programs. This is when we want kids to get really excited about learning again and try to activate some of that. So great. That's right. I think I got my slide. I got my slides a little bit mixed up here, but we'll start here with creating and sustaining equitable conditions for learning. This is one of the really key things I think. Really kind of understanding our community needs is incredibly important here. So I always say when folks want to start an after school program or a summer learning program, I'm saying, okay, so what's the purpose here? Like, what's the kind of the data driven purpose? Is it because, excuse me, is it just because you think it's going to be a fun thing to do, or are you trying to address a critical need in your community or in your neighborhood? Excuse me, just had to take a little drink of water there. But how are we working to make sure that these are safe and supportive environments for every student? We're being mindful of our student and family demographics. So, especially one of the things that we had to make sure of when I was running programs, we started to see a large influx of families whose primary language was Spanish. And so when we were starting to develop programs and events, we really needed to make sure that those environments supported those families so they were able to participate just like any other family. And so making those program accommodations and trying to think with everyone in mind is incredibly important if we're going to have high quality and successful out of school time programs. But I also think it is around this whole relevant, rigorous, and engaging opportunities. So I think Sharon made a really good point, and making it fun enough that students don't realize they're actually learning, but you're incorporating those things in there that are rigorous, and keeping kids engaged and learning throughout the process are incredibly important. Additionally, when it comes to being relevant, making sure that the activities that you're doing are age and grade level appropriate, collaborating with schools and teachers to understand, kind of what are those high level third grade reading standards? What are those high level standards for, social studies in eighth grade, and making sure those are the things that you're hitting and reinforcing in these partnerships to make sure that everyone is moving in the same direction and not kind of working in not working against one another. So also curious in this environment or in some of these areas, anyone has any examples of especially those like safe and supportive environments that you've worked towards, or some of that cross planning with school partners to make sure that the content and things that you're delivering are relevant, rigorous, and engaging. We might come back to that one as we finish out some of this, because I know we don't have that much time left, and I want to make sure we get to some resources as well. But again, building and aligning these ecosystems. So These strategic partnerships are key. So, I hope when we're talking, like I said before, with folks who are looking to start programs, or schools who are looking for support on how do they either scale up their after school or summer learning programs or start them for the first time, we are certainly directing them to look for those strategic partnerships in their communities. Libraries are one of the first folks that we ask people, have they engaged with their libraries. Others are, museums in their community, or local government, which could include Parks and Rec. Additionally, other just community-based organizations that we know are, doing kid-centered work. How do you build those partnerships, but how do you do them in a very strategic way and do them in a more formalized way, right? So really understanding, when Sharon said she was going out to schools to provide enrichment activities, really understanding, what that partnership looks like. Hey, I'm going to come out once a week, twice a week for 10 weeks, and I'm going to bring X, Y, and Z. You're going to be responsible for the supplies that the kids use. I'm bringing, X, Y, and Z. Being very clear about those partnerships is incredibly key for them to be successful long term, and being really honest about what you need in a successful partnership is really key as well. We want to get those things out on the table early on, so that everyone knows what they're responsible for and everyone knows what metrics of success look like. Going into systems of continuous improvement, this is what you need to do. Are you going to be tracking student data? What is it? What does success look like for your partnership or your after school program? Is it increased student grades? Is it some sort of social emotional outcome? Is it just, step one is just, we want 25 kids to be here from 3 until 5 instead of being on their own from 3 until 5. That's a huge measure of success sometimes. Figuring out what those measures of success are, and then really having a system to figure out how you're going to check in on that data regularly, and how you're going to report out. Additionally, then kind of, whatever your time base is it, a month, a quarter, the entire school year. Once you see, did we meet our outcomes? Did we not? Having some reflections on that and digging into what strategies can be deployed to help you meet them the next time are really key in all this. And so I want to get quickly, because I know we only have probably less than 5 minutes left, and I'm happy to stay on for a couple extra minutes if folks have questions or anything else. But just wanted to call your attention to a couple of resources that we and our partners provide. And I know I also shared with Amy, and I'm not sure, Kim, how folks will get this, but I did share kind of a one pager of a handout, and it was a PDF, had a lot of links on there to just a bunch of resources, both from myself and our partners. So hopefully folks will be able to access that later on as well. But wanted to just draw your attention. Our website is probably we try to make it our one-stop shop of resources that are available to everyone. Everything on our website is absolutely for free. So kyoutofschoolalliance.org. There's a ton of different resources, including, I already talked about the KYOSA Data Explorer. We also have a free online learning system hosted by CypherWorks. And so that has a number of courses on there, everything from how to start your after school program to how to manage student behavior in after school, to things on STEM, to things on health and wellness, all kinds of great stuff on there. So courses that anyone could take. Additionally, we have resources on the American Rescue Plan and what that looks like for out of school time programs and after school programs. We also have a section on there about going to school leaders and saying, hey, we know you have this money. Here's how we want to partner with you on that. There's some great tips on there as well. We also keep a curated events calendar for after school professionals and advocates. So if there's ever any events that you all are hosting that you would like to get out to your broader audience, you can feel free to send those to us. We'll include them on our events calendar. Again, we've tried to design our website as a one-stop shop for out-of-school time professionals, so they can go and kind of get all the resources that they need. Just a couple of next steps that I have for you, if you're willing. I always like to leave everyone, it's the educator in me. I always want to leave everybody with a little bit of homework. But would love for you to take a look at the data, explore, learn more about programs that are already operating in your area, and maybe have some meetings with school and community leaders to figure out how you can help, and again, how we can start to build some of those strategic partnerships to continue the great work that's happening in after school and summer learning across the Commonwealth. And then the third step is feel free to schedule time with us. We are a small but mighty team of two, but this is our passion. This is our job. We're here to support folks who want to be more invested in this work. And so we are certainly stand ready to be thought partners with you, also connect you with resources and help connect with other folks in your community who are doing similar work. And so with that, I wrapped it all up in just under 45 minutes. So happy to answer any questions that you all have as well. And I'll throw this, our website, our phone number, and kind of our general email is there as well. So.
I have a question.
Right,
Is the goal to kind of get after school programs in the schools themselves? And the reason I'm asking is because I don't know if it's our whole county, but I know at least at the elementary school my children are at, there is nothing. There's no after school program. It's only private, and there's only a handful of them that I even am aware of.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, for us, what we're looking at is how do we get a program available and accessible to every kid in the Commonwealth, whether that's at their school or at a local Boys and Girls Club or at their local library or at their local community center. Our position is whatever makes most sense for that community and can kind of increase accessibility. We would love for more schools to take advantage of kind of the funding they have right now to stand up after school and summer learning programs, but we know that maybe that's just not sustainable for a lot of schools. So we're just looking for kind of any way possible, because we know that community-based programs are really essential as well, not just school-based programs.
True, thank you.
Of course. And I love some of these examples that both Sharon and Chelsea have posted in the chat about working with their school partners, and Chelsea working with Kentucky Fish and Wildlife. Again, we all know that the partnership is key to make this work happen. So love that you all are making those connections and building those partnerships. Great. Well, I am going to drop our website just in the chat in case anyone just wanted to go there and take a look. You can also, on the community page of our website, you can sign up for our newsletter. We send out a monthly newsletter. I promise we don't spam you all month. We usually send out one newsletter a month and maybe one other email about some event that's going on, so you won't get tons of emails from us. But lots of great resources in there, and always just to stay up kind of with everything that's going on in this space. So feel free to sign up for our newsletter there to get. Oh.
Well, perfect. Thank you for being here and sharing.